Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Heston, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth. Back once again with my boy, AJ Ponciano. AJ, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Niall?
I'm hanging in there. I got my cough back, which is awesome. If you guys are loyal fans to The Truth, you've known that it was like 3 or 4 weeks of just straight coffee. And so I'm going to try to limit it as much as I can, but no guarantees. Before we get into Thursday Night Football here in Week 15, first of all, congratulations to those that made fantasy playoffs. How many did you make them in all your leagues? Or
I am 3 for 3. I've made it all in my leagues, two of them on buys, and then our league, I have a first round game.
yeah, and then if we both win, we actually know what it's like next highest seed or something. I don't know, but anyways, I went 3 for 4. Yeah, no, 4 for 5. I missed it in my Coastal League. I never can win in that Coastal League. But I'm like 1 seed, 3 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, I think. So, welcome to the playoffs for fantasy. Before we get into Thursday Night Football here in Week 15, I wanted to get your take on something. Okay, if you haven't been living under a rock today, Bill Belichick officially signed as the North Carolina Tar Heels head coach. So I wanted to get your opinion on it. What does that mean for North Carolina and Bill Belichick as a whole?
I mean, I wouldn't say this taints Belichick's legacy. He's one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in NFL history. If he's able to go be one of the best college football coaches of all time as well, I mean, that has meant him up there as the best, like maybe just football mind in general, not even just coach or player. Uh, I think it's cool, but on the other hand, like I can't imagine Belichick at like a recruit's house, like having dinner with their family. I remember it was like Edelman, Gronk, and Brady, like all talking about it on some type of like podcast or show or something earlier this week or late last week, and they're just talking like, how is that going to work? I think it'll be interesting, but I do believe like I think Belichick did say that his goal is to be like a true college coach, like getting players ready for the NFL, not really caught up in the NIL stuff. I mean, he knows it's going to be there, but he's basically going to be like, yeah, I'm going to prep you for the NFL. Like, you guys want to go to the NFL? This is how NFL is ran. This is how practices are ran, which I think is going to be great for players. I think he's going to get a lot of recruits just like that, like how Dion got a lot of recruits to Jackson State, and obviously when he went to Colorado, he had a lot of those guys follow him over. But I think it'll be similar. I think he's going to have a pretty good recruiting class, even though UNC hasn't been the best for college football these last couple of years. They've had some good pieces like Drake May and Marion Hampton the last couple of years. But I think it'll just be interesting. I think it's going to almost be Dion, like how everyone was just, like uh, every TV station, ESPN, everyone was just following him. Every little thing that was talked about, I think, little thing that he says is going to be kind of taken out of place at times as well. It's going to be like the Deion Sanders thing, honestly, but probably on a much bigger stage just because it is Belichick.
Yeah, look, he's 72, right? It's interesting. I think, big part of that was the fact that he's kind of been shunned out of the NFL, which I don't really understand why. I mean, Belichick is, in my opinion, the best coach of all time. I think you give Belichick more credit than Brady. Obviously, Brady was great, but Belichick commanded those defenses, helped build that roster, helped build those guys to be Super Bowl ready. Goes to college, as you mentioned, to build up guys, and I like that. I mean, obviously, being an Iowa Hawkeye fan, it's exactly what Kirk Ferentz does, right? He builds guys up for the NFL, and I think a lot of people have been like, well, no recruit's going to want to go play for Bill Belichick in the day and age of NIL. Sure, you can get your 600,000, 400,000, but how about you go to North Carolina, get your paycheck of 50 million a year if you're a quarterback, right? Like, you got to look at it from the context of, yeah, is Bill Belichick a college coach? No, but he loves coaching. He had said that he missed, actually like being a coach, coaching athletes. Now he's actually coaching college athletes, helping them prepare for the next level, as opposed to NFL guys who already made the highest level. And a lot of them probably, don't need as much coaching as these college guys do. So, I think what comes with it, national championship, no. I think this is going to be a team that's 7, 8 wins every year. But as you mentioned, most importantly, Bill Belichick gets the opportunity to coach once again. I think we're going to see a lot of talent coming out of North Carolina. On top of that, Bill Belichick's got a lot of ties to the NFL. So anybody that wants to go pro or go to the NFL, I think North Carolina is a great home and a great place for him. I'm really curious to see kind of where this touches out here. But anyways, guys, we are now in week 15, the first round of playoffs for most fantasy leagues. We have a Thursday night matchup here, an NFC West matchup as the Rams take on the 49ers. Today we're going to give you our starts, sits, sleepers, and busts. So without further ado, AJ, go ahead and give me any starts that you may have.
Yeah, so my first one's gonna be Juwan Jennings. I mean, ever since the Ayuk injury, even before that, he kind of took over that Ayuk role, being more of that slot guy, more of the safety blanket over the middle type of threat, not really outside, which is what we saw him do more when Ayuk was healthy and playing. But this Rams pass defense just has so many yards against him, and Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper both had. Amari Cooper almost had 100 yards, but 6 receptions for 95. Shakir 5 for 106 and a touchdown. Mac Hollins even had over 50 yards, a touchdown. Ty Johnson, the running back, 2 catches, 55 yards and a touchdown. Just a lot of passing yards given up, and Juwan Jennings has been the number one option. 3, 4 weeks ago, he had back-to-back games of 11 targets. Last couple weeks, 7, 5, and 3. So last week versus Chicago, 7 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a lot of that came in the first half, which really helped. It didn't help him out fantasy wise because he didn't play a lot in the second half. He played a little bit, but it wasn't like he was getting. They were pushing the ball as much as they were early on. They got I think a 21, 24 point lead going into halftime, and at that point it was just kind of run clock. It wasn't. I wouldn't say they were trying to push the ball downfield. It wasn't as big of an emphasis as just trying to win the game, run the clock. I mean, they did end up putting up 38 in that game, so he did well. And then George Kittle. I mean, I think this was a little bit more obvious in the beginning of the year, but how slow he started off, and compared to the last couple of weeks, it has been a complete 180. I mean, Kittle wasn't really even in the conversation for a top five tight end probably 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. We kind of wrote him off. Same with like Mark Andrews, how he was off to a slow start a lot. I know no one talks about Kelsey about pushing him to the wayside, but it was kind of on the same level. I mean, those top three guys that were kind of the consensus, top three of the four outside of Sam Laporta, you can even add Sam Laporta in it. They all start off super slow. In his last couple of weeks, Kittle, Kelsey, and Andrews have really turned on. Kelsey last week, 6 catches, 151 yards, no touchdowns, but he does have his bad games. 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, 1 reception for 7 yards, no touchdowns there. But if you take away that one game against Buffalo, he's had over 50 yards in 6 or 7 games. He's had 3 touchdowns. He's had 200 plus yard games. He's seen the targets. He's getting schemed up a lot more, especially with now CMC being out for sure. It's going to be Mason out for sure. Even potentially Garendo could be out on a short week. I know he's dealing with a foot injury right now. They're going to have to rely on guys like Kittle and Jennings a lot more.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and say I have three. The first is going to be Matthew Stafford. Now, Matthew Stafford, obviously, an interesting season, an interesting career to say the least, but he's been hot the last couple of games. The last 4 games, he's had 2 games at home, 2 games on the road. He's had a total of 10 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. It also broke a span of 1 interception for the last 6 games before that. So he's been riding hot. Atop that, 27.8 points on the road in New England, 19.2, 15.6, and last week 21 against Buffalo. Well, granted, Buffalo is a solid team, but that was a shootout there. And I'm not expecting the Rams to put up the 40 some points that they put up last week, but I still think Matthew Stafford's production actually is going to be pretty solid. On top of that, it is San Francisco, don't get me wrong, but that defense and that team as a whole is really banged up. So if you're looking for kind of a deep sleeper quarterback, I definitely think this could be your option. He's the 16th best position ranked quarterback, rostered 39% of league. So a lot of opportunity there. Is he a guy that's going to be a Hail Mary every time? No, because he doesn't have that rushing value. But at least the biggest thing that I've seen is consistency. And even against San Francisco on the road, I think he has the opportunity to do something special. And you've seen the trend of him having success ever since he's been able to get Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back, and I think that continues. Secondly, I'm going to go with Juwan Jennings. As you mentioned, Juwan Jennings, I mean, I've been sleeping on him. I'll continue to sleep on him, but he's been very efficient ever since that Brandon Ayuk injury and really throughout the year. Obviously, week 3, last time he played the Rams, if you guys didn't remember, 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns for 46.5 fantasy points. So that should be everything you need to know about what he does against this Rams defense. Obviously, times change, but opportunities, it would have been a little bit more scarce back then. Now he's got, the full ceiling. I mean, I feel like at times, yeah, he's going to be super hit or miss. But last week, 7 catches, 90 yards, and 2 scores. Seems like when he has his big games, he's able to get those big yardage and get into the end zone. Even when he doesn't have the best of his performances, 5 catches, 40 yards, 3 catches, 56, he's still somewhat of a reliable option. You never know what you're going to get in fantasy. And I think this could be a guy that a lot of people are talking about. He's the 17th best position ranked wide receiver, a roster in 82.6% of leagues. So when you look at it from a grand scheme of things, to see a guy that's going to be a Hail Mary, it depends, right? You don't really know what you're going to get out of him, but most of the time when he's good, he can be the difference maker for you winning that first round of the playoffs or even winning your fantasy championship. I think, again, what he did against Los Angeles last time is really going to open a lot of people's eyes and realize, hey, not saying that he's going to go up and put 46.5 points, but he can get back into that 20-point range and continue to have that sustained success moving forward. And finally, I'm going to go with Isaac Guerrero. Now, I know he's questionable right now. He suffered a foot sprain in week 14. Don't know what his status is at the moment. If he is for some reason out, it's really any 49ers running back. I think Patrick's the next guy up. I thought it was Izzy Avocanda. I do know that they did sign him, but it was also kind of a little bit of a later signing where he signed him to the practice squad. So maybe he needed some more time to get familiarized with the offense. Regardless, if Guerrero's playing, I would start Guerrero. If he's not playing, whatever the next 49er running back up, is definitely going to be one to look out for, right? I mean, we obviously knew the production was going to be there, and it was. 15 carries for 78 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 catches for 50 yards for 26.8 fantasy points. That's pretty solid. You know you're going to have success with any type of running back in that offense, in that system. So it's kind of an obvious no-brainer right here. Obviously, roster in 78.2% of leagues. Crazy to see that 76.4 roster percentage in the last week, but Guerrero's a guy that is fighting not only for for your fantasy teams, but also just to kind of see what impact he's going to have next year. With Jordan Mason out of contract, does Guerrero as a rookie step up into that backup role to CMC? Regardless, I think Guerrero's a great stash. I think he's a great start, especially if he starts. The only thing is, it is a foot sprain, right? He's got to use his feet to run, so might see a little bit of some issues, but I don't think he'll be too worried. If he's good to go, he should be good enough, and that ankle or that foot will bother him, but it shouldn't bother him to the point of continuing to re-injure it. But that is something that you should keep in the back of your mind. All right, what about any sits?
I have two quick ones. One's gonna be Ricky Pearsall. I've just been disappointing this year. Obviously, he dealt with getting a shot early on, and it was going to take a while for him to come back. And he started off pretty hot. First 3 games, back 3 catches, 20 for 21 yards, 4 for 38, and 4 for 73 to touchdown. And then he went on a 3 game stretch where he got a total of 3 targets, no receptions, so no yards. And last week for Chicago, 1 reception, 5 yards. It's just been disappointing all year. It's just interesting how they went with him at the end of the first round. I don't remember if they traded up to go get him or it was their pick. But I mean, he just really hasn't been like they haven't needed him, especially since Ayuk. I thought his role was going to be going up, and we just haven't seen it at whatsoever. And then Kobe Parkinson, kind of interesting has been the opposite. He started off the year pretty well at the time position, mainly because you didn't have Cup and you didn't have Puka early on, both getting injured. He had a little bit of production, but ever since Cup and Puka have been back on the field, I want to say it's been right around that Seahawk game and maybe in the Miami game. They're both completely back together. In that time, he's had 4 catches for basically 51 yards, 52 yards, and a touchdown. His most targets he's had is 2 in a game versus Philly. In the last 4 weeks, he has 1 catch in each game, just for right around 10 yards. He just hasn't been there. I said 2 quick ones. Neither guy, just the production hasn't been there. It was either start off really slow or start off really hot, and with injuries and guys coming back or even guys leaving, there just really has been an uptick in any type of role.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys one sit, and it's going to be Debo Samuel. I never realized, or I never really thought this day would come where I would classify Debo Samuel as a sit, but he has just not been the Debo Samuel that we're used to. Obviously, Debo Samuel in recent years has been a guy that's been a great receiving wide receiver, but he's also been a great running wide receiver. He just hasn't had the success. I know he's been banged up a little bit, so I can understand that, but right now he's quote unquote fully healthy. In the last 4 weeks, have just been pretty dismal. 4 catches, 22 yards, I believe 1 rush for -1 yards. And then last week, 2 for 22 and 5 rushes for 13 yards. His last 4 weeks in fantasy value, 6.1, 3.1, 4, and 5.5. That is just not the Deebo Samuel numbers that we've expected. He had some good starts early on in the year, and I really thought his opportunity would be a lot more now that Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk are out. I know Kittle and Juwan Jennings have been there this whole time, but I really kind of figured with those injuries, Deebo would kind of take that next step and step up to the plate. You just haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it's ever going to come this season, just because we're at that point now where it's time to make these tough decisions. Do I say drop Debo? No, obviously you're not going to drop him, but it is worth noting that a guy like Debo Samuel is not rostered in 5% of leagues. I think people are kind of getting fed up with his inability to put up some good fantasy numbers, especially what he did the first 2 weeks, back to back 18-point performances. And I really just need to see some confidence in the next couple of weeks to even consider starting him in a semifinal or a championship game, because this is, not the point where you mess around and say, hey, Debo, we hope that you figure it out and get some fantasy production. I mean, we're past that point. This is the playoffs. It's win or go home. So I'm just not comfortable starting Debo right now, especially with what I've seen the past couple of weeks. What about any sleepers?
Yeah, so I have two. First one's going to be Patrick Taylor. In my opinion, he is the next guy up. If Isaac Rendo does not play, he's someone that I think you, especially if you have Grendo, go pick him up if you haven't already, just in case if he doesn't play. Because we saw it last week, Grendo. He got all the touches. He got receptions. He got touchdowns. I mean, shoot, even Patrick Taylor, he had a solid game himself. 7 rush attempts in that game, 25 yards, got a touchdown. So they used him even as a backup role. I wouldn't start him obviously if Grendo is ready to go, but if Grendo doesn't get much better, I know it's a foot injury also, especially that's a hard one for running back. I mean, it's literally in the position running back with your foot. You're on it every single play. You're putting a lot of pressure on it. If he's not back, Patrick Taylor I think is the next guy up, especially because he was the second leading back on rush attempts there with 7. Like I mentioned, he hasn't been at a much like a great receiving back. His best year was last year, 7 receptions, 49 yards. So solid there. He was averaging 4.5 yards a reception. So decent numbers, but not bad. And then Tutu Atwell. One thing about Tutu is he's either gonna have a really good game or a really bad game. And one of the things I know about you have Cup, you have Puka, it's gonna be hard to get him the ball, but when he can always has big games. I mean, last time he played 49ers, 4 for 93. I believe that was when Cooper Cup and Puka both weren't in the game, but they could scheme up 1 or 2 plays or they take some deep shots. I could see him having a 65, 70-yard touchdown this game, especially if they're able to stop Puka and Cup pretty early on. And he's that number 3 option. He's that slot guy. Targets have been sitting right around that 3 range the last couple of weeks, but on the other hand, he's been giving you 30 to 40 yards. So I just imagine at least sometime soon he's got to have at least one game where he breaks over 100, where they just focus completely on Puka and Cup. And like I say, last time he played 49ers, had almost 100 yards on 4 receptions. I remember in the playoffs, I want to say it was 2 years ago, he had like 100 yards and a touchdown there against the 49ers. It seems like he always has almost 100 yards every time he plays the 49ers.
So for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with Blake Corum. Now, I feel like this is kind of a deep sleeper just because obviously he's a rookie, but Blake Corum has kind of really stepped up, especially the past, 2 weeks as far as carries are concerned. He's still yet to get his first touchdown of the year. The back-to-back games of 8 carries. And the biggest reason why I'm noting that is the fact that typically Sean McVay has Kyron go out there all the time. Yeah, every now and then he'll need a break and he'll get a couple carries like Blake Corum in the past, 1 carry, 2 carries, 3 carries. But recently, I've seen the 8 carries, and I've seen him kind of be utilized more, and that speaks volumes to the running back that Blake Corum is. I think a lot of people, like myself included, obviously being an Iowa fan, especially in that Big Ten championship game last year against Michigan, really got to watch a lot of Blake Corum, and I saw a lot of great things out of him. A little bit smaller, a little bit more shifty, and you wouldn't expect him to kind of have that burst or acceleration that he does. So talent-wise, he is a good running back. Is he going to be anywhere near Kyron's production? Probably not, but it's also worth noting too that Thursday nights always there's just the weird thing that happens, right? Like backup running backs, tight ends, like in general, have good weeks. And I think Blake Corum could get into the first touchdown of the year, especially if that 49ers defensive front is a little bit banged up. They're going to really focus on run, 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 and Kyron can only run so many times on a drive. By that point, Blake Corum might be there towards the red zone at the end of the drive and rushing in for a touchdown. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. It's a hot take, but I think regardless, Blake Corum continues to sit in that 8 to 10 carries, gets into the end zone, and the 30 or 40 yards that he's gotten. And right there, for a guy like Blake Corum, who's rostered in 14.7% of leagues, that's a win. Now, this is really more of like a deeper league, right? Like 16, 20 team leagues where you're really trying to find that 1 or 2 guys that can be a difference maker. Probably not at all considering starting him in a 12-man league unless you're really depleted at the running back position. But I do think the fact that it is a Thursday night game does kind of open the opportunity for him to have success. And he hadn't have a carry in their first match against San Francisco, but this is a different Blake Corum going into this Week 15 matchup. And then any busts?
Yeah, so I have Debo. I was gonna put him as a sit, but it's so hard to sit Debo, especially because you probably got him pretty early on in your draft. I know with me, I have Debo and Juwan, so like I've been lucky in our league that at least I have Juwan to make up for it. But I've been starting Debo, but these last 4 weeks it's been bad. Against Seattle, Green Bay, Buffalo, and Chicago, he went 22 yards on 4 receptions, 21 yard with 1 reception. 20 yards, 4 receptions, 22 yards, 2 receptions. He hasn't gone over 30 yards, and it's not like he's doing much on the ground. Last week was his most carries, second most carries he's had all year, 5 for 13 yards. Outside of that, he rushed the ball one other time against Seattle 4 weeks ago, one rush attempt for -1 yards. Against Green Bay and Buffalo, didn't have a single rush attempt there. He also has a fumble 2 weeks ago against Buffalo. It's just all been bad. I was gonna put like I said, I was gonna put him as a sit, but it's so hard to sit him, especially in playoffs, especially in a divisional game that it's like, well, they have a chance still to make the playoffs, the 49ers technically. They gotta win this game. They gotta hope Seattle, Arizona basically lose out. Like the 49ers still have a chance. So it's hard to say sit Debo, but he's right there. I mean, I have him as a bust. Like I said, he hasn't gone over 5 receptions in the last 4 weeks. He hasn't gone over 30 yards in the last 4 weeks at all. He's not really giving you much rushing value. And it's not like a couple years ago, like where if he had a bad game, he would make it up with a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown. He has five touchdowns all year, and he hasn't had one, I want to say, in the last like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, something like that. I mean, yeah, last 7 weeks he hasn't had a touchdown. So it's just been really disappointing as a whole with Debo.
So for my bust, I'm gonna go with Colby Parkinson. I know you mentioned him a little bit earlier. I mean, look, Colby Parkinson was the guy that I thought would get more targets when Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out, and he had that game against Green Bay, 7 catches for 52 yards. But since then, it's just been really bad. Last 4 weeks has had one reception for anywhere from 10 to 19 yards, and the 2 weeks before that had zero completely. So I think a lot of people, early on were kind of buying the Colby Parkinson hype as far as maybe being a sleeper tight end, a tight end two, backup tight end, plug and plays kind of guy. And obviously, that's just kind of ventured off now, rostered in 7% of leagues. But for leagues that are rostering him, I feel like at this point, you're just kind of wasting a roster spot. Obviously, now that both those receivers are back, they've had great production. I believe Demarcus Robinson, at least going into last week, led the team with 8 receiving touchdowns. So he's not even the third option on this team, probably not even fourth option in that matter. So I think it's about time that you can hit the drop button on Colby Parkinson. I just don't see him having any type of success, especially in this matchup against San Francisco when they do play so well typically against the tight end position. Do you have a game prediction?
Yeah, the 49ers, I don't think are going to win this game. I think the Rams looked really good, especially last week against the Bills. That was probably the game of the year, in my opinion. That was a great game to watch. Uh, divisional game, though, I did think it'll be a little bit closer. I'm going to say 24-13. And actually, no, let's go 17. Let's make it a touchdown difference there. But yeah, Rams winning.
I'm gonna go 23-20. I think the 49ers winning this game. I think the 49ers, look, this is a team that obviously lost a lot of players. Lost C-Mac, lost Ayuk. I mean, Bosa's been banged up. Like they've lost so many players, like their star players. But I think, they're gonna I wouldn't say they're gonna make the playoffs, but I think they're gonna make things interesting towards the end because everybody counted them out. But I think Kyle Shanahan has done a great job. I think he's a great coach. And there's still a lot of key players on this team, even on the defense position and the offense position, like Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, running back. Me, but anybody back there and have success. So I'm not saying that they're going to make the postseason. I think that's kind of hard for them, but I think they could be a spot or two out, and this is a team that's going to contend for something. So I think 23-20. I think the Rams put up a good fight. They've arguably been the most surprising team, in my opinion, or one of the more surprising teams, especially as of late, just of how young they are and things like that. And it should be a good NFC West matchup. And with how close that division is as a whole for both teams, this could be a big game to kind of seal that division, try to be in a better path forward there. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter. The Truth as one to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy level, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp to focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity while also maintaining ecosystem friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15 for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hessen, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.